Chapter 10. Life in Hollow Creek had settled into a fragile, tense rhythm. Kaylin was an accepted fixture, the quiet, muscular giant who chopped wood and helped Garrick repair the roof. But acceptance was not forgiveness, and Elara's heart remained locked. 3 weeks after Kaylin's arrival, the peace broke. I was in the infirmary barn, sorting dried herbs, when a desperate scream pierced the evening air. It wasn't the sound of an injury, it was the howl of pure political terror. I ran outside. Garrick and Silas were standing frozen near the forge. Kaylin was already moving. A small band of riders, 3 men and a woman, had burst into the center of the settlement. They wore the dark, tattered colors of the defeated Shadows, the terrorist group Kaylin had spent 2 years fighting. "There he is," the leader shouted, pointing a broken sword directly at Kaylin. "The general, the betrayer." They were remnants, broken soldiers seeking revenge on the man who had destroyed their cause. Kaylin instantly transformed. The quiet woodcutter vanished, replaced by the General of the North. His posture shifted, his silver eyes turning hard and analytical. "Stay back," he commanded Garrick and Silas, shoving them toward the forge door. He didn't have a weapon, only the heavy, soot-stained tunic on his back. He moved to intercept the riders, a human shield. "Kaylin!" I cried out, terrified. "Take Lyra and hide," he roared, already engaging the first rider, twisting the man from his horse and slamming him into the mud. The fight was brutal. Kaylin was outnumbered and unarmed, relying purely on his strength and skill. He fought with a ruthless efficiency I recognized from his old life, the efficiency that had won him the war but had cost him his family. I looked toward the forge. Lyra was peering out the window, her small face streaked with tears. I had to protect her. But Kaylin was tiring. The shadow woman soldier was fierce, her blade slicing a deep gash across his arm. Blood bloomed instantly on the rough leather. "He's the reason we lost everything," the shadow woman shrieked, driving Kaylin back toward the barn. I knew in that paralyzing moment that running wouldn't work. Kaylin would die protecting us, and then they would kill us too. I looked down at my satchel, clutched tight in my hand. Inside, I didn't have a sword, but I had something far more potent, the paralysis powder I had intended to use on Kaylin himself. I didn't hesitate. I bolted toward the fight, circling wide behind the attackers, making myself a difficult target. "Kaylin, drop!" I screamed. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough to be bewildered by my presence, and then, instinctively, he obeyed. The former general, trained to command, followed the order of the Omega he had once called a liability. As Kaylin collapsed, I flung the small pouch of fine white powder into the air, aiming for the riders. The powder was potent. It hit the 3 shadows closest to me, blinding them instantly. They sputtered, clutching their faces, collapsing into rigid, unmoving statues in the dirt. The shadow woman, however, saw me. She dropped her knife and lunged, realizing I was the greater threat. I didn't have time to react. She tackled me to the ground, her fingers digging into my neck, cutting off my breath. A roar, primal and terrifying, ripped through the air. Kaylin, partially stunned but already rising, slammed his shoulder into the shadow woman's back. She cried out in pain and rolled away. Kaylin stood over me, panting, his arm bleeding freely, his focus entirely on my safety. "Elara," he gasped, pulling me to my feet. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I said, shaking but steady. I looked at the defeated shadows, frozen mid-motion in the mud. They won't be moving for hours. Kaylin looked from the paralyzed enemies to the fine residue of the powder still dusting the air, and then to me. His silver eyes were no longer focused on my beauty or my past. They were alight with pure respect. "You saved us," he said, his voice ringing with disbelief. "You disarmed them without a blade. You were never weak. I was a blind, arrogant fool to think my protection was all you needed." He didn't touch me. He didn't demand a kiss or a reward. He simply stood there, a king who had finally realized that his Omega was not a delicate treasure to be locked away, but a formidable partner who had just saved his life. The last remnants of his strategic superiority crumbled, away replaced by the terrifying, fragile foundation of genuine mutual respect. Chapter 11. The adrenaline from the fight faded, leaving me shaking and leaning against the rough wood of the barn. Kalen was across from me, his breathing ragged, holding his bleeding arm. The shadow attackers were frozen mid-attack, a surreal monument to my unexpected intervention. "Your arm," I said, my voice surprisingly level. I opened my satchel, pulling out a clean strip of linen and a powerful astringent salve. He watched me, his silver eyes not leaving my face. "It doesn't matter. I thought I lost you again. I thought my arrogance had cost both of your lives." I approached him, my movements precise. I cleaned the wound, ignoring the involuntary hiss of pain he let out. "It wasn't your arrogance that saved us, Kalen," I said, wrapping the linen tightly. "It was my skill, the skill you called a liability, the strength you chose to ignore." "I know," he confessed, sinking onto an overturned bucket. He looked up at me, the great king humbled by a small bleeding gash. "I know now that my strength was a cage. I didn't want a mate. I wanted a delicate trophy I could protect. You needed a partner, an equal." He paused, then asked the question that held the weight of 2 years. "Why didn't you leave me paralyzed? You had the chance. You could have walked away forever." "Because of her," I whispered, glancing at the forge where Lyra was now safely nestled with Silas. "Because she deserves to know her father isn't a coward, even if he is an arrogant fool." I looked at him, finally allowing my years of bottled-up emotion to show. "You were right, Kalen. Your life is worthless to me. Your throne is worthless. Your name is worthless. But your presence here, today, fighting for us, that means everything." "Then let me stay," he pleaded, reaching out a hand, not to touch me, but to simply offer himself. "I didn't come here to ask you to come back to the Citadel. I came here to ask if I could stay in Hollow Creek. I have severed all ties. I am no longer king. I am just a man with strong arms who can chop wood, defend a fence line, and tell better stories than I can lead an army." He looked at my daughter's silver eyes through the small forge window. "I want to watch her grow. I want to tell her the stories of the stars you taught me. I will scrub floors, I will mend clothes, I will wait on you and Garrick and Silas for the rest of my life if you just let me earn your forgiveness, one day at a time." I looked at the dagger he had left in the dirt 2 days ago. It was still there, coated in mud, the symbol of his surrender. I knelt, picking up the dagger, my fingers closed around the cold hilt. Kalen flinched, bracing himself. He expected me to drive it into his heart. Instead, I slid the dagger into the sheath on my own belt. "I need a partner, Kalen. I don't need a protector or a subject. And I need a father for Lyra, a real father, not a weekend visitor." I gestured to the 2 remaining frozen shadows in the field. "We have work to do. We need to tie them up and decide what to do with them. You are strong. I am smart. That is how we survive here." I looked at him, a faint, fragile smile finally touching my lips. "The king is dead. Welcome to the settlement, Kalen. Now get up. We start earning that forgiveness now." He rose slowly, tears finally clouding his silver eyes. He didn't speak. He simply nodded, a solemn promise in the solemnity of the gesture that he would spend the rest of his life making good on the debt he owed. We walked side by side toward the remaining enemies, the healer and the warrior, finally on the same side, facing their future together in the quiet safety of the neutral lands. Epilogue. 3 years later. The smell of wood smoke and the rhythmic clanging of the hammer are the sounds of home. Hollow Creek thrived. It became a sanctuary defended by a strong beta blacksmith, a clever Omega healer, and a former king who was now the head of the neighborhood watch. Kaelin built us a small, sturdy cottage next to the forge with a thick roof that never leaks. His massive hands, no longer blistered, were skilled at everything from laying stones to tending a garden. He was king no more. He was simply Lyra's Da. Lyra is 5 now. She is a perfect fusion of us, her father's height and strength, my dark hair and healer's gift. She is spoiled not by riches, but by attention. Kaelin never leaves her side. He is there for every scraped knee, every story, every simple moment he missed. Garrick and Silas are our family. They joke that they had to get a king to finally do the chores they hated. One evening, after we tuck Lyra into bed, Kaelin finds me sitting by the fireplace, arranging my dried herbs. He sits opposite me, not too close, still respecting the boundaries I had built. "Elara," he begins, his voice soft. "I know I can never make up for the 2 years I lost, but I want to make an honest start. I want to give you back the choice I stole." He reaches into his tunic and pulls out a small, roughly carved wooden wolf, its eyes painted silver. It is clumsy, clearly his own work. "I am asking you to be my partner," he says, "not my queen, not my mate, just my equal. We build this life together, here, no titles, just us. We choose this." I smile, taking the small wolf carving. It is the most beautiful gift he has ever given me. "Yes, Kaelin," I say softly, "I choose this. I choose you, the man who stayed in the dirt. I choose the father who showed up. I choose us." He closes the distance between us, finally pulling me into his arms. His embrace is nothing like the rushed, desperate clutches of the past. It is steady, powerful, and utterly secure. "Thank you, Elara," he murmurs against my hair. "I will spend every day making sure you never regret giving me a second chance." "I know," I reply, "because I do know. He proved himself through actions, not just words." In that moment, surrounded by the scent of wood smoke and the steady heartbeat of the man who chose love over power, I finally felt complete. The Alpha King married the warrior while I carried his child, so I vanished. Now he begs forgiveness.